Check one take. Hello. Oh. Right, if we're ready, we'll kick it off, and hopefully we'll be in having a cup of tea in about 10 minutes, says he, hopefully. Okay, well, first of all, welcome to the annual general meeting of the Christchurch Photographic Society. Welcome. And we have a list of apologies. Are there any more apologies from the floor? Jackie. Anybody else? Okay, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 apologies. I would like to move that those apologies be accepted. All in favour? Oh, we didn't get a seconder. You seconded it.
I'll second it.
Okay, previous minutes. Has everybody seen a copy of the minutes from the previous meeting that were emailed a couple of weeks ago? Okay. I don't want to talk about them first. I'll just move that they are a true and accurate record. Can somebody move that accept that they are a true and accurate record? Diane. Seconder. John Suckling. Yep. Okay, all those in favour? Against? That's done. Okay, I'm going to briefly talk about a couple of things in business arising that actually arises later in the meeting, so I'm not going to go into them in depth. I'm just going to point them out. The first one relates to the setting up, which we did last year, of the various funds. So there's some more discussion about that to go on, and particularly relating to the Property Reserve Fund. And one of the stated objectives in last year's minutes was to maintain a reserve fund with the capacity to modify and mitigate any new facility we may need to move to. We didn't, when we passed that last year, expect to be using it straight away, but we will be. Also within that capacity, in relation to the Training and Education Fund, Mike White last year suggested, when we were talking about that we're going to have a stated aim of spending 3,000 plus or minus per year, Mike suggested that we write that up and put it in the Constitution. We agreed with that in principle and said we were going to do it this year. We've had some more discussions about that and some consultations with accounting people, and instead of putting it in the Constitution, we're putting it in the accounts instructions to the various committees. And again, we'll talk about that later. So that's just a couple of things that arose from the minutes that will be addressed at various stages throughout the meeting. So I'll leave it at that. And so the next thing is the President's report. I emailed it out today. Do you want me to read it if anybody hasn't seen it? Okay, I'll read it fast. First of all, I'm saying welcome to the 2024 CPS AGM. I'm really pleased that everybody's here. Thanks to John for organising it, basically. So the year in short, I'm saying that we began 2024 feeling that we're in a stable situation, and having made some changes, we're looking forward to a continued relationship with the Riccarton Community Church. However, that was not to be, as the church has continued to grow, and that growth has created difficulties with the sharing of facilities. However, I am confident that our new venue at the Workers' Educational Association will be a fantastic opportunity for us to grow, not just the church. So I think we're moving forward positively. Commitment to the CPS direction. We have been and will continue to develop annual program of activities. Some of these are things that we're doing for a long time, and some of them are new. This year we did. Firstly, we ran speakers. We had a range of speakers, some long in the planning and some at short notice. Our Training and Education Fund has paid for interesting overseas speakers via online presentations, and we will continue to do that from time to time. The short notice speakers this year's included both the RNZAF group of photographers and Ian Borthwick, who both sort of turned up with essentially no notice, and were really highly successful presentations. So we have concluded that we need to maintain flexibility within our program so that we can be open to that sort of opportunity. Tutorials, there are a range of tutorials and training sessions at the 7 o'clock session. We really want to emphasise that, and it's a good thing, that people now think of CPS as starting at 7, where in the past quite often people viewed it as a tutorial beforehand and the real happenings started at 8. Now we start at 7, we just have a wider range of activities. Activity sessions, we've had several activity sessions this year, and we will continue to develop a program of those over 2025. Probably more, since we are not constrained by a significant number of our evenings not available due to the RCC. The Laurie Thomas Winter School, Rach Evans did a good job of organising, or did a great job of organising a really good weekend with Rachel Gillespie and Andrew Spencer in Kaikoura, and plans are underway for next year already. Print and PI competitions. These competitions remain a large part of our program and provide valuable critiques and from which we all can grow. The secretaries of Nicola Jackson, Diane Kelsey, Janine Money, Francesca Davies and Jan Bogue have worked tirelessly to bring us this program, so well done to all of them. The New Zealand Landscape Salon. This salon was once again a successful event with a rebranding and the emphasis on the new book taking things in a different direction. Dennis did an awesome job of making this happen, but a special mention also needs to go to Mike White, Joe Curtis and Anna Stevens, who made the book, who brought the book together, and that was a big step in the right direction. We did the MDC again, and once again John Casey did a great job of this monthly fun event, and just a huge pat on the back to John. Once again, a reminder, it's really good to have a range of judges, and it's a super opportunity to have a go at judging something. So John's always looking for people to put together the winners list and dish out the chocolate, so don't be backwards in coming forward. CPS doesn't run without helpers. Each week we have people who set up and run the program. The membership secretary is Ian Anderson, who we don't see Ian very often, but he does a really good job of keeping things together in the background. Projection, sound and lighting. Gordon, Wayne, Andrew, Tim, Ian, Alan and Alistair have been here every night making that happen, so well done to them and thank you again. And the MCs, Joe, Diane, Heidi, Karen, Nelson, John McCall and myself it's good to have a good number so we can rotate around and we'll have a go. And opening and closing, Dennis, Adrian and Nerily have always been here and stayed late and done all the work that's necessary. Just a quick note about the committee. The committee is comprised of volunteers who give their time and expertise freely by investing a substantial amount of time on behalf of CPS. I really enjoyed working with the committee this year, and we continue to have them pretty much all back on deck again next year. So in 2025, the committee will be myself as president, Dennis as vice president, John as secretary, Alan as treasurer, Andrew's the webmaster, Nicola's the natural history secretary, Janine as the print secretary and Diane as the print secretary as well, Francesca and Jan as the PI secretaries, and also Heidi. So in conclusion, I hope you have enjoyed the program this year, and make sure you come along for final night on the 7th of December. And we'll also talk a little bit more next week about our preview night on the Wednesday of that week at the Riccarton Community Church. So that concludes my President's report for 2024. and I would move that that be accepted. Is there a seconder? Whoever you like. All those in favour? Good, I'm not reading it again. Okay, Alan, notice for accounts.
Hi. Yes, I sent the financial and service statement out this afternoon. I didn't realise it hadn't been sent, so I apologise for that. So I hope you've all had a chance to have a look at it. So what we've done, we're in good health financially. At the end of the financial year, we had $92,000 in the bank, which is an improvement of 14,000 more or less from the previous year. It will go down this time because we're going to spend a substantial amount of money getting shifted. The statement that we've included in these notes to do with the education fund, which we're going to call the Newell Grenfell Education Fund, because Newell very generously has donated $10,000 towards that. And this is the statement. The purpose and intention is for the committee to allocate approximately $3,000 per annum from the education fund to provide learning opportunities for members to improve and learn new photographic skills. And we've put that in there so that this will continue to be to come in front of future committees. I won't be on the committee forever. It feels like I have been, but I know at some stage I'll be coming off, and those of us that are on, we won't be there, and it's important that a decision like this is perpetuated for as long as possible. So I would like to move that the, what is it called? The financial and service statements are accepted. They haven't actually been reviewed as yet, and when it is reviewed, they will be sent out to you.
Are there any questions about the financial statement? Okay, I'd like to make a bit of an observation when you get your copy, particularly when it's come back from the accountant and you have a bit of a look at it. It looks like quite a lot of money in one big big account thing. You have to remember that we have distributed that into the various funds, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, that they don't sit physically in different accounts per se. They just are sort of bundled into an understanding of what we've got in the various funds. So within that, there are effectively three independent funds. There's the Laurie Thomas Fund, which we talked about last year, but that's been around for a long time, and that runs the Laurie Thomas Winter School. There's the Property Reserve Fund, which I'm going to talk about in a second, and then there's this training fund, which I'm delighted to also say that we're going to rename the Newell Grenfell Training and Education Fund, and I want to take this opportunity of saying huge thank you to Newell for that kind and generous donation, and we're really taking it on that we want to spend that money well. The intention is that money will disappear, and it'll disappear and people will be happy that we spent it. So that's why we've tied that operating instruction down so that we are going to do it. So when you get the accounts, it looks like a big number. It also has within that some deposits that people have paid for the Pure Salt trip the year in advance. So there's a kind of a fluidity in there that you need to be aware of when you read those accounts. You want to add anything else, Ellen?
No. If you haven't yet had a chance to read the statements, the Laurie Thomas Fund at present has $21,296. The property fund has $20,000, and the Neil Grenfell Education Fund has $34,812, and we've got $16,600 for the rest, which will build up as you all pay your subs.
Okay, Cliff, there's no more questions. Well, that concludes the financial report. We'll move on to election of officers, and we have no election tonight essentially because we have a full list of committee members who are happy to continue, and if we need to, we still have the scope to second people, so we can do that later on. So at this point, we don't have multiple people standing for the various officers, so I'm just going to declare that the committee, as I read out before, are elected for 2025. Okay, general business. 3 items in general business, and they all kind of tie in a little bit. The first item of general business, which is something that we do each year, is the setting of subscriptions. Again, we need to point out and apologise. The system inadvertently sent out a subscription notice a little while ago that was wrong. Effectively, that's wrong because that's just what was in the system previously, and we weren't aware that was going to do that. And the reason we changed the timing of the subscriptions last year so we can set subscriptions tonight that will apply for next year. So we've updated the system so in the future you won't get a notice of that until after the AGM when the meeting in general set the subscriptions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the subscriptions and then read out what is being proposed. I'm going to start with the $64,000 question. Are we proposing a reduction in subs because the WEA membership or the fortnightly fee is significantly cheaper than it is here? And the answer to that is no at this stage, but, and I'm just going to explain a little bit about why we're not changing anything at the moment. Effectively, we see the move to a new venue as something that is going to produce a little bit of uncertainty for the next couple of years while we bed in and establish a relationship that we've had long-standing here. So we don't think that's the time to be changing things. If we had not made the change last year, we probably would have left it the same figure and let it flow through. But given that we've made a change and we've had people paying the new rate all of this year who joined, we're going to continue with the same fee, which will be in excess of what we probably require to run the day-to-day operations of CPS. However, we are going to spend pretty much all of the property reserve fund in order to get the facilities up to speed for what we need, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. And so we view the surplus, if you want to put it that way, of higher fees for the next couple of years as being used to rebuild some capacity in property reserve for things like broken computers and day-to-day changes of things that we need, not for the greater functionality of that property reserve fund. If in a couple of years we're finding we're comfortably operating within our resources, then absolutely we will be happy to reconsider the subscription and work from there. We've also made some changes. If you saw the email that came out, and this relates to what it was last year too, the anomaly of overseas members. For some time we've had a situation where, and there are 2 overseas members at present, they've been charged a significantly lower amount, and there's also a category of overseas non-competing members, which are even lower still, and we don't have anybody in that category. This is a historical thing from where we used to have country members as well, and that's where people lived well outside. They might have lived out of Rangiora, or Barbara was living in Hamner Springs, for example. I think she was a country member for a while. But those people who are members but are just not able to get here, and that was an acknowledgement of the fact that that's the case. We now have distant members. We've got several members, John Ben, for example, Ferg Campbell's another example, of people who want to be members of CPS but are just not able to be here. So what we're going to do is combine the whole lot and reinstigate what was country members and merge them with overseas members, because we see them in the same kind of category. They're the people who can watch CPS live if they want to, or the next day or whatever. They can compete, they can do everything without actually being here. So they do miss a significant number of things. So what we are proposing is essentially a 20% reduction for those overseas members, and we're going to classify them all as distant members, and we're going to do away with the non-competitive side. So you're either in or you're not, is the crux of it. Does anybody have anything to say about that before I read out what the numbers are? Questions on that process? Does it seem reasonable? Okay, so there'll be a new email coming out that's actually the setting the subscriptions, and the proposal for setting of subscription at the AGM is that we will set the following subscriptions. Normal membership, $150. Distant members, $120. Just again to make that clear, that's $20 more for the current overseas people, and it's $30 less for the current distant members. So between the two of them, it'll kind of even itself out in the long term. So distant members, $120. Junior membership under 21, $55. And family membership, this rate applies to those who live in the same address. And the first member shall pay the full rate, and all other family members, husband, wife, partner, son, daughter, brother, sister, etc., pay half rate. That is the fee structure that we are proposing. Essentially, it's unchanged other than the distant member from last year. So I would like to move that the new subscription schedule as proposed be accepted. Can we have a seconder, please? Get somebody? Sorry? Diane. She's enthusiastically seconding everything. So. Okay, all those in favour? Against? Good. Financial planning. Effectively, we've talked about this. Alan's talked about the Property Reserve Fund, the Training and Education Fund, and the Laurie Thomas Fund. One of the stated objectives of the Property Reserve Fund was to hold reserves for when we move, and that's exactly what we're going to do, and we are essentially going to spend it. We had $20,000 in there, and that's going to be spent, but I'll talk about that in a second. But I also want to take this opportunity once again to just talk about the fact that we're now, when it comes to the Training and Education Fund, that is the Newell Grenfell Fund. So I think that's something, a pretty cool way to be moving forward, and I'm delighted to be able to make that change. So once again, thank you to Newell. Item 3 was the approval of expenditure for outfitting the new location. So there are 3, potentially 4 things that we need to do to get the WEA effectively up to spec so that we can continue with our operations as we hold them now. The first component is the sound system and the projection system. The WEA's projector is dodgy, and basically, and the sound system is dodgy. You know, Gordon tells me that the mic system is actually illegal because it's been so old that the frequencies aren't usable anymore. So they're quite happy for us to use whatever we want and replace them whatever we want. So we've got a quote for the sound system of currently $11,400, and what that will do is basically fit a brand new system that's up to the speed of what we've got. Put new speakers, new sound mixing things, and all of the options. We'll be able to use the mics and stuff the same as the way we are now with a good sound system. We'll be taking this screen with us, and we'll be getting that installed, and we're going to have to pay for some electrical connections to get the power supply to it to be able to set the projector up. The projector itself, we're going to mount permanently in the WEA's. They've got a roof-mounted projector, and our projector is going to go on the roof mount thing, and it's going to become available for them to use with the other facilities. But it's a huge step forward, and it's, you know, that's one of the things we're aiming to work for and help with them. So sound and vision, we're tentatively talking about 11,400. The print display system that we've put in here with all the lights and stuff, we're just going to leave here. There's a couple of things. The blackout curtains at the back of the hall here, and those print displays are things that we've put up, and we could take them with us if we wanted to, but we've essentially decided we're going to leave them here. The time we spent with the RCC means that, you know, we don't want to wreck things as we leave, and we're in a better position to move forward and put a new system in at the WEA. So we're going to have to put there are some print rails there, but they are more designed for hanging things than prints sitting on them, so a bit of modification. We're going to take along a builder next week and get him to come up with a brilliant quote or a more thorough idea of what's involved. So thanks, Pete. We'll get that sorted as soon as we can. And we've got an estimate from an electrician to come and to fit some, not the same as that, but some similar lighting system. Overall, that really rough estimation, but somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 is their expectation for that. The other area we need to change there is we need some storage, basically for the print boards and for the day-to-day operations like boxes and things like that. They are happy for us to build a shed that'll sit outside. If we're going to build a shed, it needs to be secure, waterproof, and easily accessible. So we're not talking about something from Bunnings, a tin thing from Bunnings. We're talking about a proper shed. And I've looked at some of those, and we've got some prices. And again, we're going to get our team builder down and a bunch of, you know, handy people, handy chaps, and put up a shed sometime in the new year. And we have budgeted $5,000 for that, or estimated that it's going to be $5,000. So those three items come to just over $20,000 in themselves. The other area that potentially we might need to think about is chairs. They don't have that many chairs, and they are nowhere near as comfortable as the ones you're sitting on. So it might be that we need to think about bringing cushions, but equally the WEA are open to some sort of joint arrangement, and it might be that we propose to put some money towards the upgrading of their seating to something similar to what we've got here, and that'll again be a step forward for them. So there's quite a bit to spend. When we do that, we consider that we will have effectively met the obligation that we were questioned about legacies that have been left to the CPS some years ago, and we don't really have a proper history of who they were, but people left money so that we could have our own venue, which is something we wouldn't want now, but we never did. So that obligation, I think, will be discharged by here, but we do want to re-establish the property reserve fund to cover things, you know, like new computers and new projectors and all sorts of the bits and pieces that we're looking for. So in order to spend the money, I need approval from the meeting to spend, and I'm going to ask for up to $25,000, which is the entire contents of the property reserve fund, and another $5,000 from you know, the general working accounts. Is there any discussion on that before we go? Judy?
How many years do we have that we, if we're putting all this money in, can we state that it's for at least 5 years or at least 7 years or whatever?
That's a work in progress at the moment. We're absolutely looking to get a contract between us and them. I can't tell you what we'll have agreed on. Essentially, they are happy for us on an open. They see no reason that we should need to change, but clearly it's their building. If there's another earthquake, then the world could change. So we do need a document that discusses that, and that will essentially say something like the fact that the sound and the projector and the shed and all those sort of things are our property, and we'll take them with us if we need to.
Yes, I think we do need, say, 2 years or something that
Yep.
we can stay for. You know, if we're spending all this money, we're not going to be able to spend it on somewhere else straight away. So we need a 2, 3, 4 year grace before they can chuck us out.
Absolutely. That's something that, as I say, the wording, the specific wording hasn't been finalised yet, but we're working on that, and that'll be in place before we start there next year. And I'll let you know what it is. But thank you for that observation. Anybody else got anything? Yo.
Linked with Rigdon Community Church that is in the business of supplying chairs. It does this to churches, to halls, to movie theatres. It would be well worth just talking to the Pathway Charitable Trust.
Alan mentioned that a couple of weeks ago, so it's on our mind, and we would. It's just going to depend how the WEA want to do that, because I don't think, I would think that the chairs, again, we haven't worked through exactly how this worked, but it's likely to be a more of a donation from us to help them buy the chairs, and up to them to decide what they are with our input. But if we can get chairs like this at a good price, I think that would be a good step in the right direction.
You mentioned the projector is going to be a shared. We're going to install it and that they can use it. Is that the same with the sound system, is it?
Yep.
Okay.
So possibly will be, another option is to simplify the sound system a little bit. But so basically the whole hall thing, including the screen and everything, we're saying that we'll provide it and they use it and monitor it. In some respects, it's not hugely different to what happens here. All the sound equipment up the back is the Rigdon Community Churches, and we've been using it for as long as I've been coming, and we haven't broken it. So that's a concern that was expressed, and effectively that was the response, and I'm comfortable with that.
Yep. The only other question I've got is obviously webcam, and in regards to the projector, is there is a life obviously on projector bulbs. Are we going to look at upgrading that before we mount it, or anything like that?
We haven't discussed that. Do you think that's a good idea? Okay.
WEA is going to use some of the gear that we're putting in, and that's fine. Who's paying the insurance on it?
Hasn't been discussed. Worth noting. What happens at the moment, Alan?
We don't have any insurance. We've chosen to self-insure. It was hugely expensive, and basically we get charged as though we're a business, and made no sense considering that most of the time our stuff was locked up in a room, so the risk was incredibly low, but they were charging it like we're a commercial organisation.
But it's worth talking to the WEA. They may be able to include it in theirs. I don't know what they do, so but worth noting. Thank you.
I know it was discussed, but I can't remember, about internet coverage. Do we need to do anything over and above, or we're sorted?
Hopefully not. There's broadband cover there. One of the things that's going to happen on the night of the 4th, I think it is, that Wednesday, is that the boys are going to try and thrash it and see what happens. Anybody else? Okay, so back to the original motion. I move that we approve the spending of up to 25,000 to cover modifications required for operation within the CWEA. Do we have a seconder, Jane? Oh. Got somebody? Right, all in favour? Aye. Against? Good. That's it. We haven't got anything else. There were no other motions tabled, so that concludes the meeting. Thank you for coming and thank you for your input. And let's go and get a cup of tea.
Before we go.
Oh.
Sorry. Anybody that's come in late, can you please see me at the front and sign in for the AGM? Diane's got the thing there. And I've also got New Zealand camera out the front for those that haven't picked it up as yet. It's at the front there now if you want it.
Thanks for that. Let's see what you say when you come and have a look at it in a couple of weeks. Okay, cup of tea time and then we'll get sorted for this. Oh, Newell. I'm not sure whether I need to cough or say, Joe, come in here. We'll cough a lot, and then anybody who's walking in late, we can all turn and stare at them.
Preempted me. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for everyone who's brought in goodies for the raffle. I just want to clarify, there's a few things on here. There's some, Heidi's picked up, there it is, and there's some lenses and camera. Is that, I don't know who brought those. Are they part of it as well? You don't want those, Tim? Donation? Perfect, thanks very much. And I will bring empty bags next week if anybody else is coming with some goodies. But thank you, thanks again.
Okay, we'll crank in with the 8 o'clock session. First of all, thank you again to everybody who bought stuff. That's really good. We're going to have 2 or 3 different raffles. Okay, we've also got something that I want to announce now for the raffles. We're going to have 3 raffles at the final night. The first one is going to be the Christmas raffles, and there'll be 2 or 3 of those depending on how much stuff turns up next week. The second one will be the raffle for the MDC, so that's anybody who's entered the MDC. There's a raffle drawn for one of those for a free membership, so that's to encourage you to participate in the MDC, so that can be anybody who's been in the MDC this year. And the third raffle, we're going to have another raffle selling tickets, but we're only going to sell tickets to CPS members. This is, if anybody who turns up can buy a raffle ticket for the Christmas one, but the third raffle is going to be members only, and that is because we are raffling a ticket to the NZIPP convention later in the year. I think it's in August. I think it's in August. So that's a significant amount of money, and it's a significant thing, and it's something that's really cool. Lots of people have been and had a look, and I went to it a couple of years ago, and it was really, really good. So this is a really good chance to come and buy a few tickets and cross your fingers and cross your toes, and there's an opportunity to be sponsored to the NZIPP convention later on in the year. So I'll probably put out an email about that just so that everybody knows, and maybe the people might have to think about remote stuff, remote ticket purchases. Okay, one more week for raffle stuff. So again, if you've got anything else and you forgot this week, bring it next week, and we're going to have a couple of really good Christmas raffles. I have a request, and I would like somebody to say I can help tonight, because at the moment we don't have anybody doing the supper for the final night. So here's a good chance to, if you're sitting next to somebody, say, how about we do it together, or whatever. I just want somebody to come and say to me afterwards, hey, I'm happy to take on that. It doesn't require you to cook forever. Basically what we're talking about is going and purchasing some stuff. We've used it before from New World. New World does a really good supper kind of thing. Basically we're just going to give you a budget, go and spend this, go to Copeland's, get a bunch of potato top pies and all that sort of stuff. Warm them up. We're going to be able to, using the kitchen and the room next door for supper, because we've hired the whole facility for final night. So I'm looking for a couple of volunteers to do the supper, and I'm going to lock the doors and not let anybody out until I've got those volunteers tonight. So have a think about that, please, before we move on. Just a little brief thing before I introduce the speaker for tonight, and that's next week. Just a reminder from Diana's thing that we have kind of 3 things on next week. We've got a showcase of ICM. So let's make the last showcase a really good one. I would like people to, if you've already put some images in there, to make an effort to come along and talk about them. If you haven't put some ICM images and you've got some at home, please stick those in, to the showcase and be prepared to come along and talk about them. I've got a few that I've been thinking about driving in that I'll put in, and let's make it a really good showcase to finish things off. We're also going to have the last MDC of the year, which is cut, and the speaker for next week is Kevin Clark. So it's going to be a really good night. This is the last night, the last Wednesday meeting in the Riccarton Community Church. So come along and enjoy it. Make it a really good one to finish things off for next week. Okay, now I'm going to introduce the speaker tonight for. Basically, it's really good to have a good speaker after the AGM, so people will come along and go to the AGM. So thank you, Robyn, for coming and being a really good speaker. I was at I did a presentation at an NZIPP thing a little while ago, and I got accosted by this gaggle of photographers from Rangiora who said to me, if you're looking for speakers at CPS, make sure you talk to Robyn. So they volunteered her in a quick email to Robyn, and she said she's delighted to come along and talk to us. She's going to talk to us tonight about 201 species of birds in Honduras. So I think that's going to be a pretty spectacular presentation. I had a brief word with Robyn beforehand when I talked about distant members. So I'd like to challenge all of you to twist her arm to becoming a distant member and coming back to CPS and being involved in CPS. She briefly was when she moved here from Blenheim, but then moved out to Pegasus, which is bloody miles away, so you can kind of understand it. So she fits in the category of distant member. So at the conclusion of her talk tonight, I want you to challenge you all to twist her arm and sign her up for next year. So before we go, let's warm welcome round of applause, please, for Robyn Carter.
Right, can you hear me now? Right. So I had the wonderful opportunity to go to the Honduras for a whole month in February this year, and we went in search of motmots, and we found 6 species of them while we were there. They're quite a special bird. And we saw 217, not 201, 217 other species while we were there. So Honduras is over in Central America. It's quite a big country. It borders on Guatemala, Nicaragua and El Salvador. But everybody lives in this part of Honduras. On the other side is basically unexplored and nobody can go there. I would love to go in there. There would be species of animals and birds that nobody has ever seen yet. But the government protects that area and nobody can go there. So just a little bit of context, New Zealand is actually twice the size of Honduras with half the amount of population. But the bird life of Honduras, we've got 798 species, and the bird life of New Zealand is only 206. So you've got more chances of photographing birds in Honduras than in New Zealand. So what did I take? It's always really hard to take camera gear. What do you take when you travel? And there's always weight problems at the airport. So I took my Canon R6 II, which I had bought a month before, my 100 to 500 lens, a Canon 100 macro lens, my 24-105 lens. I took my Canon 5D3 thinking I was going to do landscapes with those. I took a very cheap Chinese macro ring flash, a Benro Carbon Fibre tripod with a 3-way head, a Manfrotto monopod with a gimbal head, and my Samsung S23 Ultra phone. But what I actually used was just my R6 II and 100 to 500. I used my R6 II with my 100 millimeter with the macro ring flash only 3 times. I used my monopod with the gimbal head, especially for photographing hummingbirds. I used my Samsung 23 for all my landscapes. My 5D3, and I used 3 times because it was too heavy to carry, and the tripod never came out of my suitcase. So, but we were mainly on the road, and we were mainly using our handhold. I did also have a 1.4 converter. So this is the team. So this is William. He was a team leader. We were very lucky to meet him when we were in Costa Rica. So he was the one that introduced us to Honduras, and he said, come, I would love to show you my country. So that was the driver. He was a very good driver. Jude's from Christchurch. Chris and Jill was from Blenheim. These 2 were top wildlife photographers and friends of mine from the UK. And Mark was from America. He was a very kind, very quiet American, which was really nice. And she was our go-to, so she was part of the team. So if we had any problems or anything needed to be solved, we just used to go to her and she would solve it. She was absolutely great. So it was just a small group, and that was the bus we were on, so we had plenty of room, and it was very comfortable. So what's this? That is what we were looking at most of the time to search for birds. Now, without our guides, we would not have found those birds. It was just so hard because we were just in the rainforest all the time. So on the very first day, first day in the morning, we were out first thing in the hotel grounds, and that was the mall at Sea Eater. That was the very first bird I photographed, and apparently it's very rare and only found in a very small area, so I was really pleased about that. But then we went into San Pedro Sula, which is the main city, and we just went to the supermarket to pick up things, and these were just a few photos with my phone outside the car. So I'm glad I'm not an electrician in San Pedro Sula. So the next morning, we drove from San Pedro, getting out of the city, right down to the Copan ruins. And this is on the border of Guatemala's over here. As you can see, it's only 180 kilometres, but it took 4.5 hours. You think that our roads are bad sometimes with potholes. You haven't seen anything. These potholes were massive. You can, fill them with water and swim in them. So on arrival to our hotel, the first thing we saw was this pygmy owl, which was right outside the lounge where we were having drinks when we arrived. That's what greeted us. So of course we just rushed and got our cameras, and we spent ages photographing this, and it just sat there probably for an hour. It was just absolutely amazing. The Copan was one of the safest places we were at. It's quite a tourist town because of the Copan ruins. These were the Copan ruins. I meant to use my phone. I've got a little thing on my phone that tells me about it. But basically, they have only recently been found. It's now a UNESCO heritage site, and they've been. It was all covered in rainforest, so nobody could see it. But we went for a walk around the town, and then the next day we went into the ruins, and our guide was not only an archaeologist, and he was telling us all about the ruins itself, but he was also a birder and a bird guide. So we were not only birding, but learning about the ruins itself. So it was quite an interesting tour, but it was very hot. We had to be very careful in the rainforest around the ruins, so that every step we took, there were ants, and these fire ants, and they're really, really nasty. So we had to, as soon as we, stepped to take a photo of the bird, the first thing we had to do was look around and make sure that those weren't on the ground. But we came across these brown wood creepers. the Honduras national bird, which is the scarlet macaw, the white-throated magpie jay, the Aracari toucan, the gartered trogon, the streaked-backed oriole, the painted bunting, which was really rare, we were really, really lucky to get this, and the turquoise-browed motmot. And I just love these. Can you click that? Just didn't go to the thing. So this is what they sound like. So we could actually hear them before we could see them. And then as soon as you heard them, we could look for them and find them. And they would just sit in the branches like that. Then we saw the ivory-billed wood creeper. So just looking for that one. So that one's the brown and that's the ivory-billed. And this is the melodious blackbird. Now, I actually think it's much nicer than our blackbird. I'll see if I can get it to sing. No, I can't. Can you click on that one as well? They were all over Honduras, and they became quite a comfort to hear wherever you went, and you could always recognise them. And I think they're so much nicer than our blackbird with their song. It's almost like our thrush, really. So then from the Copan ruins, we had to drive back up to San Pedro Sula, then down to Panacam Lodge. And that was 244 kilometres, and so that was a full day. Unfortunately, I had eaten something that didn't agree with me, and I was actually really sick. So I slept most of that time on the bus. And this is our lodge. So it was just absolutely beautiful, and beautiful grounds by the lake. And they had a hummingbird deck, and it was just amazing. So the next day, when everyone else went walking, I just sat on the hummingbird deck, and I just practiced my hummingbirds. And to that, I used my monopod and my gimbal. And you can see here, there were feeders. So what I did, I learnt that the birds would come into the feeder, and then they would go back and hover, and then come in, and then go back and hover. So what I learned is that I would learn to actually move my gimbal away, and then I would take the photos when they were away from the feeder, so I wouldn't get the feeder into the images. And then they would go across onto some other branches. So this is the white-bellied hummingbird. The female violet sable-wing. And this is the male violet sable-wing. And they're just acrobatic. They're the only bird that can fly backwards. This is the long-billed hermit. So the following day, we went on a short boat trip on the lake, and we saw some herons, but the wind got up, so we were meant to go on for quite some time, but the wind was so bad that we had to get off the boat and do a walk instead. But we still saw the great kiskadee, which is quite a common bird in that area. If anyone's been to Costa Rica or any places like that, it's quite common. We saw the garter trogon again. I did this one because this one actually showed both the front and the back. It's actually quite a pretty bird. The social flycatchers, there's more than one flycatcher in this image. It's the actual, can anyone see it? The spider web, yeah. And then we found brown setwings. And if you want to know how I remember all these names, and I use Seek. Does anyone know about Seek? It's an app that you can download on your phone, and it's the same as iNaturalist. And you can just take a photo of your photo, either on the back of your camera or on your computer, and it will tell you what it is. You can also use Google Lens if you're unsure. So I was okay, but I was still really weak. So I spent the day around Penacam Lodge just taking macro and relaxing and working on my computer and practicing taking hummingbirds, while the others went on this hike up this mountain. And I'm in two minds whether to be jealous or not. They only saw 2 birds, and the hike was 5 hours up, and they virtually had to slide down on the way back, and it was really, and they took about 2 or 3 days to recover. They were so tired. And I had a wonderful time taking all these macro. But the birds they did see and the views they got were amazing, and I'll show you some. So I did some macro around the lodge. And I practiced on this. I was testing my shutter speeds on my new camera. And I went from 1/100 of a second on a sitting hummingbird right up to 1/2000 of a second. And with a sitting hummingbird on my camera, I found 1/200 of a second, which came out the best. And I was just taking all the photos and then putting them on my computer. And this was just sitting outside my window from my deck on the lodge. So it's a really, really pretty bird. But this is the views the others got when they climbed the mountain. And they got this beautiful wine-throated hummingbird that flashed its bib. And I never saw it because you only find it right up this mountain. So in some ways I'm jealous, and other times, and it's a bit torn really. So for the next day we went to Luna del Puente, which is the cacao farm. So this was absolutely fantastic, and we learned all about the making of chocolate from the buds, the flour, and the cocoa bean, to the making, the roasting, and then the making of the chocolate. We managed to make the chocolate ourselves and having a hot chocolate, and it was the best chocolate I've ever tasted. And then afterwards they had a hide, and we just went into the hide and took photos. So this is the yellow-faced grassquit. And this is a grey-crowned yellow-throat, and I just love this bird. It's just tiny, but it just loves water, and it was in the water the whole time. It's just a really pretty bird. We had a few night walks. This is the kinkajou, and it very kindly showed us its sex. So this one is obviously a female. So. But these were jumping up above the trees. It's quite big. It's bigger than a possum. So we were actually looking for owls, but we didn't see the owls, but we did find one of there. So the next day we drove from Penacam Lodge up to the lodge at the spa at Pico Benito, and it wasn't too bad. The roads were actually a bit better up there because it's quite touristy. And it was absolutely beautiful there. And these are completely different hummingbirds, different species up there because it's on the side of a mountain in the rainforest. So that one, the one on the left is the crowned wood nymph, and the one on the right is the white-necked Jacobin. And we had an afternoon with some snakes, and so that was quite interesting. These are non-venomous ones, and they just came straight at us. And so we were running in all directions because they didn't actually tell us it was poisonous or not. But my favourite one was this one. This is a non-venomous one. It's only found in Pico Bonito National Park. And I got to touch it, and it was really, really beautiful. This is the cat-eye snake, mainly because the eyes look like cat's eyes. And it's the rattlesnake. And I used my 100 to 500 lens. I didn't use my macro lens. Then we did a night walk, and so this is when I used my macro and the ring flash. And so this is a giant falgurid bug, and it's only found in Honduras. And this is a very hungry caterpillar, and I've used Seek and I've used Google Lens, and I have never found the name of it. So we saw some red-eyed tree frogs, a southern toad, and they, a lot of the hotels there, they had these giant screens, probably 3 times as long as that, with huge big lights at the back of them. And they're called moth traps, and all the moths would come and sit on them, and you can go up and take photos with your macro lens on them. So that was fascinating because you could see all the different types of moth. So this day was quite a day. So we took the bus trip down to the Cerro y Salado National Park. And what it was is it's the only working banana train. It was the only banana train when the days when they used to pull out the bananas from the rainforest when the Honduras was basically a banana republic. And they've still got this little track running. And we sat in a train like this, and the guys took the motorbike behind us and just pushed us along. And this went on for about, 3 kilometres, so it was about a half-hour train trip. And then at the end of it, we were in this beautiful national park, and we went on these boats. And this is us on the boats, looking at all the wildlife there. And what we saw are these long-nosed bats. So they just sat on the sign. They were very, very obliging. They weren't on the trees, they were actually on the sign telling us there were long-nosed bats there. So we saw a white heron. That's a juvenile striated heron. We saw a northern potu. It's a bit similar to a frogmouth. A nighthawk. The boat herons. The Amazon kingfisher, the red lord parrot, and we saw these mantled howler monkeys up in the tree. So we were just on the boat here, and they were just right up above us. Jacanas. They had these beautiful tropical phalaus. They were about this big. They were just really amazing. And these are little Christmas worms. Now, I used to live in Barbados many years ago when I was 17, and I saw these, and so I was quite surprised to see them there. But I guess this is the Caribbean side of the Honduras, and this is the Caribbean side, and I was hoping for those beautiful white beaches with palm trees like there was in Barbados. So I was sorely disappointed because I was hoping to go for a swim, but it was just dirty and really rough. So. Back at the hotel, we saw the white capuchin monkeys. We were up on these really big towers. The following morning, we went to a ranch, and they had just hummingbirds, so we just practiced hummingbirds. That's actually a road behind that. It's not a screen, it's a road. Scaly-breasted. That's the crowned wood nymph. And we saw the American screech owl. Now there's a sound there. Could you click on the thing? So all the owls are quite different sound. Does anyone know what this is? I know it's actually quite hard to see. Anybody? I should offer $100. So you saw the northern patoo, and this is the great patoo. So it's a much, much bigger. They're quite things, but I was really nervous because I had to actually go into the bush, and there's snakes in the bush, and I don't like snakes that much. So I was very, very careful about where I stood. So I couldn't get round. I didn't have the confidence to get round to get the front of the bird. The white-faced capuchin, I was up in the tower looking down. It was very hot. These are spider monkeys. I didn't actually know what these were because at the Auckland Zoo, the spider monkeys are really thin. They're quite different. I think they're from Africa. The Central American spider monkeys are really, really quite muscly, very big. I had to ask what these were, and they're quite a different colour. So this is us having a sundowner on the tower in the tropical heat. It was straight rum, and I didn't care. It was just so hot. We were taking photos. We were really, really high. That's how high we were. So we had to climb all the way up. So William said that night at dinner, William said, right, you've got to get up at 3 o'clock the next morning. And we jump in the bus and we're going down to a wildlife refuge to see a very special bird. So we all got up at 3 o'clock in the morning and piled into the bus. And on the way to the wildlife reserve, we saw an eastern meadowlark, some tropical kingbirds, a tropical gnatcatcher. This was just on the side of the road, just the American kestrel. And this was the special bird that we were getting. It's the only endemic bird of Honduras, and we had to get special permission to go into this military camp. It's protected by all these military guys with guns, and we spent about 3 hours there photographing it. And those were the only 2 I got in flight. Very hard to, they're so fast. The Honduran emerald, it's the rufous tail. There was one other hummingbird there. But we saw the white heron, which I was quite surprised on because it was a very dry area. There was no water. It was sort of forest. Turkey vultures. And then the black and white owls. Could you please do the speaker on the black and white owl? So once again, the owls are quite different. So this again, just taken during the day. Very beautiful owls. So back to Luna do Puente, but on the way we stopped at a seaside village, just a seaside village called Tila first, but just before we left we hurriedly took a few more hummingbirds, because that's what I was there for the hummingbirds. But at Tira, the fishing village, we saw the black-bellied plover. I have no idea why it's called a black-bellied one, because I could not see any black on its belly. We saw the tri-coloured heron, the spotted sandpiper, and a juvenile laughing gull. And I always wanted to know why they were called laughing gulls. Could you click the speaker, please? So that's why. It's quite funny, isn't it? This is where we stayed at Luna do Puente. It's the cabin. The gardens were lush, tropical gardens that you could walk around. There was birds everywhere. And we went for a night walk. Now this is a water spider. This was at the very start of the walk. It was on a leaf. It was about as big as my hand. I felt like I was in The Lord of the Rings. You know. But that's actually not as big as you think it is, because, this bit, see that white bit round there? That's actually an egg sac. And you can see it there, better by the side on. And we saw this white gecko, and I was down there photographing it, and suddenly the bird guide, one of our guides, said, "Ooh, look at this." And right behind us was the snake. And this is the most dangerous snake in Central America. One bite and we would have had to get to hospital within an hour and a half, or it would kill you. So it's the most poisonous furulence. It was only little, it was probably just a juvenile, but they're just as poisonous. So what did we do? We got out our macro cameras, and we were photographing them with our macro lens. So we started off quite a way away, and then we just slowly took one step and got a bit closer, because camera lenses protect you from everything, don't they? So we saw the military frog as well. And then we went back in the hide the next morning, so that's what the hide looks like. That's what's inside the hide. So then we were saying bye, because most of them were leaving. So Jude from Christchurch was flying to Galapagos, and Stephen and Louise were going back to the UK, which just left another 3 of us. So we just took these photos from the hide, the yellow-throated euphonia. This was quite common, white-winged dove, the dusky-capped flycatcher. It was pouring with rain, but we were in the hide, so it didn't matter. This is a green jay, and I just loved this bird. And to me, it sounded like a fax machine. Would you like to just... So it's quite really interesting that you can actually hear these, and then you think, what is that? Because you come from New Zealand and you're not used to hearing these sounds. You know. And the tropical kingbird. So that was 14 days and 149 species, and now there were just 4 of us left, and we're off into the mountains. So we drove from Luna to Makala, which was quite a long way. It was all day. And these are the roads that we were travelling on. They weren't too bad. And this was one of the lakes that at Makala where we were staying. And on the way there, I was at the back and I couldn't hear anything because I'm deaf. And there was the guides were at the front, and the other 3 people were sort of in between. And one of the guides apparently said, oh, I think there's a snake down there. And so one of the other guys hopped down the bank, and all of a sudden the snake just came out and went for Mark, the American. So Mark just ran, he just went off. And then the snake veered to Jill, and she ran, and I had no idea what was happening. I could see the snake, so I just sat there, and it came for me, and I just stood there and didn't do anything. So the snake just took one look at me and got a fright and went into the bush, and that was it. And everybody else's heart was racing, and I was nice and calm. I had no idea, but we did learn then that the snake was non-venomous, but that doesn't matter, they can still bite. So that was a bit of an excitement for the evening. But the next day we went out and we found a falva sow. And this next lot I haven't got any sounds. So this is a falva sow. This was just, we just walked down this mountain, and as I arrived, it just flew straight in front of my camera and just landed on the branch. And I didn't even say, look, I just started photographing, and then everyone looked at what I was photographing, and then they started. And then it flew a little bit further away, so we went down, and it was scratching its beak, and it was just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And these are scarlet tanagers. The yellow one is the female, the red one, the scarlet one is the male. These are up in the mountain, so the trees and everything is quite different. This is the mountain trogon, so that's quite different again. I don't know what's wrong with its the front, but it's obviously been in a fight or something. We saw a red start. And then we visited a coffee plantation for lunch, and we learnt about the dark side of coffee. So these school children go and work on these plantations and pick the coffee beans for all summer holidays, and they get paid such a pittance that all they can do is, from the money, they can just buy themselves an exercise book or maybe a pair of shoes that has to last them for the year. So next time you're having a cup of coffee, just remember that. So, yes, but these lovely women cooked us lunch on the Southern, so that was really nice. And then we were back into the bush, and we saw the quetzal. So this is quite a different species to the ones that you find in Costa Rica. And this is a common sight on the mountains, that you see elderly women still working and gathering the firewood. And then from Makala we went to this Kotan, where we stayed in a beautiful eco-lodge, beautiful grounds, and we saw the Amazon kingfisher. This is the azure-crowned hummingbird. And we were very, very, very lucky to see not one but two azure blue-throated motmots. You very, very rarely see them in pairs, but we did, so we were really lucky, and this was right outside my cabin. And this is the white-eared hummingbird. So I spent a day photographing these. And they've got a very, very long tongue to get the nectar out of the flower. And we saw the Stella's jay, the acorn woodpeckers, and the scarlet macaws there. The scarlet macaw being the national bird, they put these great big nesting boxes up there to encourage them to breed. So from Kotan, we went to Gracias, which is the main city in the mountains. And this is really interesting. So that's a wolf spider. When I saw it, I thought the wolf spider had caught a wasp, but it hadn't. When I got home, I did some research, and what actually happened is that's a tiger hawk moth, and tiger hawk wasp. It's about that big. It's absolutely massive, and it's really strong. It can catch and pick up tarantulas, and there are tarantulas in Honduras, but I never saw them. So what it's done, it's paralysed the wolf spider, that was big enough. You know, wolf spiders are really big. And it was dragging it along. So I thought at first it was the spider moving the wasp, but it wasn't. It was the wasp dragging the spider. And it was dragging it into its den, so it had paralysed it. And what it would do, it would then lay eggs into the spider, and it will keep it paralysed, to keep it alive, so that the baby wasps will have it won't kill it, they'll just get all the best areas of the spider to its nature, I guess. I don't know, it's just horrible to think of, the poor spider, but that's it there being dragged into its den. So I had a series of about 10 photos of this, and I used my long lens, not my macro. So I wasn't going to get anywhere near them. So we saw a bluebird. These are only really little, they're only about this big. The Yucatan woodpecker. This is what we were photographing in. This quite heavy bush up in the mountains. That's what the bush looked like. And I took this one because I wanted to explain to you that not all my photos were good. You know, I didn't get them. You know, I took 10,000 photos and I have deleted most of them. So. But we got a black-throated green warbler, which is only really tiny. And we saw the blue-capped motmot, so that's, I think, number 6. And the squirrel cuckoo, which was a highlight. It's so beautiful. And you can see why it's called a squirrel with its long tail. And then before you saw the red lord parrot, and this was just in the city, this is the yellow lord. And then back to Luna del Puente, we sort of kept that as our base because it was so beautiful. And this is on the morning we left. We got up at 6:30 in the morning, went straight back into the hide. And these are 4 birds we hadn't seen before. So the Baltimore oriole, the Rufus ventus chakalaka, and the blue-black grassquit. And another motmot, just as we were leaving. So, if you might be interested in going to Honduras to do this amazing trip, you can just get in touch with me. You know, it's not expensive. Honduras is really cheap. I actually took $3,500 to spend over there, and I brought it all back home because there was nothing to spend it on. There's no tourist shops. There's nothing there to spend. Basically, the only thing we bought at supermarket was red wine to drink after a day's birding. Or you might be interested in our next trip in 2026. We're going to 24 days in Colombia, and this is going to be 8 photographers, and it's going to be safari with both birds and mammals. There was one set for this February, but it fell through because we didn't quite have enough people. So, and that's Colombia. And that's it. I hope I haven't bored you.
That was awesome. Is there any questions? Can we pass the mic around? Hang on.
Thank you. Earlier on, you showed a photograph of a motmot that looked as though it had tea bags dangling behind it, below it.
Can somebody, because I'm deaf, can somebody come? I'll have to come.
Earlier on your films, you showed a photograph of 2 motmots with something like tea bags below them.
There was something below them?
Yes.
Oh, they've got 2, no, they're not tea bags, they're part of their tail.
Oh, right.
So the tail goes down,
Yes.
and then there's just these little long things that,
Okay.
that it's all part of their tail.
Yeah.
They do look like tea bags, I suppose.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Are all the hummingbirds similar size? What sort of size are they?
Oh, they range, but most of them are only about that big. You know, so they're small and they're fast. So you know, some of them are a little bit bigger, some of them, but not much.
So what sort of shutter speeds were you using for those?
When they're in flight, I probably had them on 1/2000 of a second. When they're sitting on the branch, about 1/500 of a second.
Anybody else?
I'm not a bird photographer, but I was interested. Earlier on, you used auto ISO. You put up some something on the screen, and it used auto ISO. Do you use auto
Always
ISO?
use auto
or
ISO.
do you? Do you have a limit on it? To
So my ISO got very high, sometimes 25,000.
Okay. Yeah.
And I've got a very old computer laptop. And so I use denoise on just about every image, and every image took 18 minutes for denoise
you were saying that.
things, and I took 10,000 photos.
Yeah.
So what I would do is in Lightroom, I would select a whole folder and hit denoise and go to bed, and then 3 days later it would come and it would be done. And so I need to upgrade my computer. So.
Thank you. I was just curious.
I think we need a birding 101 session from you sometime next year. Do you think we could talk you into that?
Pardon?
Could we talk you into coming along to do a birding 101
Oh
session?
yes, sure.
How's that? Anybody else got any
how
questions?
about doing it in Colombia?
Yeah, that sounds like even better. I think we might have some volunteers to come along with you. That was really awesome.
So the reason I'm going to Colombia is because of the sword-billed hummingbird. Has anyone heard of that? So the hummingbird is only about this big, and their bill is about this long. So you can imagine the bird and then their bill. And that's what I want to take. It probably was sitting up there, yeah. And that's my bucket list, one of my bucket list birds.
That's cool. Anybody else? Well, thank you again, Robyn. Another round of applause for Robyn.
Thank you.
This is the point where I normally hand you a little card and saying thank you, there's a gift from us, but it's still in the thing out the back. I haven't sorted it, so I'm going to get back to you afterwards. Okay, that concludes the evening. Thank you again for everybody coming from the AGM and voting for everything we ask you to vote for. Dennis has just gone out there to make sure that door's locked so that I have some volunteers to come and do the supper before anybody else, so we can get that sorted tonight. That would be really good. Remember, next week's going to be the last night here, and it's a pretty special one, so come along, and if you haven't bought something for the raffle, there's a good opportunity. It'll be a really good raffle. Thank you for coming tonight. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks again to Robyn, and see you next week.